At the reading of my grandfather's will, my cousin Mark smirked. He promised me everything, he boasted. The lawyer cleared his throat, then said actually he left you something quite special. Mark's face quickly turned red as he read the letter aloud. I could tell my grandfather had always been sharp, even in his final years. But I had no idea just how much he had thought ahead until that moment. Let me rewind a bit. My grandfather, James Calloway, was a self-made man. He started with nothing but a small construction company in the 60s, working tirelessly from dawn till dusk, building homes, office spaces, and eventually entire neighborhoods. By the time he retired, he built a modest fortune, not a billionaire, but enough to raise eyebrows and spark whispers within the family. That's where my cousin Mark comes in. Mark was the kind of person who believed the world owed him something. He was raised spoiled by his parents, my Uncle Robert and Aunt Diane, who showered him with gifts and never made him work for anything. He had the best of everything, the latest gadgets, the finest clothes, and never had to lift a finger to earn it. He spent his life burning through cash like it was endless. Grandfather and I had a close bond. While Mark was off partying in Miami or Vegas, I spent my summers in my grandfather's workshop, learning to sand wood, mix cement, and more importantly, how to be a good person. When my grandfather passed, it hit me hard. It affected us all. While most of us. Mark, however, seemed to be eyeing the situation a little differently at the funeral. He had this smug, confident demeanor, as if he knew something no one else did. And that brings us to the will reading. We all gathered in a stately office, the air thick with the smell of old books and leather, the kind of room where you expect serious matters to be settled. My mom sat beside me, her face somber and her hands folded in her lap. Uncle Robert and Aunt Diane were seated across from us. Diane, with her usual flair, dabbed at her eyes like she was performing for an audience. Mark, of course, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, wearing a smug grin that made my stomach turn. Just as the lawyer began to speak, Mark leaned over to me. "Just so you know," he said, his voice oozing false sympathy, "Grandpa promised me everything." I raised an eyebrow at him. He shrugged. We had a deal. He knew I was the one who could carry on his legacy. I almost laughed. Mark had never done a day of hard work in his life. He wouldn't know the first thing about running a business or managing property. But before I could respond, the lawyer cleared his throat. "Let's begin," he said. The lawyer started with some minor bequests, a donation to my grandfather's favorite charity, a small inheritance for his loyal housekeeper, Mrs. Alvarez. Then he moved on to the family. My mother received a generous sum, enough to ensure her comfort for the rest of her life. Uncle Robert got a fair share as well, though it was less than what my mother received. And then came Mark. He straightened up, that familiar smug grin creeping back onto his face. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began. "To my grandson Mark," the lawyer said, then paused for a moment, eyeing the document before looking up. "I leave a very special note." The room fell into an eerie silence. Mark's confident smile faded. The lawyer pulled out a sealed envelope. "This was written specifically for you by your grandfather." Mark snatched the envelope and tore it open. As his eyes scanned the page, his face went from red to pale. His hands began to tremble. He said nothing. I couldn't stand it any longer. "Well?" I asked. He shot me a look of pure fury, crumpled the note in his fists, and bolted up from his chair, almost knocking it over. "This is," he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The lawyer let out a sigh, unfolding another paper. "As for the rest of you, Mr. Calloway left detailed instructions for his estate." I barely heard him. All I could think about was that note. When I finally got a hold of it, I realized just how brilliant my grandfather had been. Mark had stormed off, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. Uncle Robert shifted in his seat, his face dark with anger, while Aunt Diane clutched her pearls as if she might faint. The lawyer, however, remained unbothered and continued reading the will. My name came up next. "To my grandson Daniel," the lawyer announced, "I leave." He paused, cleared his throat, and said everything. I blinked in disbelief. "What?" The lawyer adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. "Your grandfather left you the majority of his estate, his company, his properties, his assets." For the first time, my mother looked up, her face transforming from grief to shock. Uncle Robert's expression twisted into one of sour disbelief, as if he had bitten into something bitter. Aunt Diane, Ever the dramatic gasped loudly, and I half expected her to faint right there. What do you mean, everything? Uncle Robert snapped, his voice harsh with anger. This can't be right. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, the lawyer said calmly, his voice unwavering. Mr. Calloway was very specific in his wishes. Daniel was the only one he trusted to carry on his legacy. My heart raced. This wasn't a small inheritance. This was everything. Everything my grandfather had worked for all his life. Uncle Robert's face turned beet red. This is absurd. Mark was promised the entire estate. This has to be illegal. The lawyer didn't flinch. This will was prepared over a year ago, notarized, witnessed, and completely legal. Diane, recovering her composure quicker than I expected, leaned forward with a sweet, almost coaxing tone. Daniel, she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, I'm sure you don't want all this responsibility. You're young, and managing a business is no small task. Maybe you consider sharing it with your cousin Mark. I glanced at her, then at Uncle Robert, and finally at the crumpled note Mark had left behind. Slowly, I unfolded it, smoothing it flat on the table. My grandfather's handwriting was neat, purposeful. Mark, I've watched you squander every opportunity I ever gave you. You've never worked for anything. You've lied, stolen, and manipulated your way through life, thinking you're invincible. Well, today that changes. You get nothing, not because I don't love you, but because I do. If I gave you everything, you'd burn through it in a year. This is your chance to prove me wrong. Build your own future. If you can do that, you'll realize I was never your enemy. I was your last hope. I read it over twice, letting the gravity of the words sink in. Mark hadn't just been cut out. He was being tested. But there was something in his reaction, the way he stormed out, that unsettled me. This wasn't over. That evening, an unknown number flashed across my phone. Enjoy it while you can, Mark's voice sneered through the line. You think Grandpa was clever. You think this is fair. He laughed bitterly. You have no idea what's coming. The line went silent. I sat there, staring at my phone, my pulse racing. I had inherited everything, but at what cost? I didn't sleep a wink that night. Mark's words kept ringing in my head. You have no idea what's coming. At first, I told myself it was just his anger talking. I mean, wouldn't anyone be furious if they'd spent their life expecting a fortune, only to get a lecture instead? But something about his tone, his bitterness, that certainty in his voice, made my stomach churn. Still, I had no choice but to move on. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of meetings with accountants, lawyers, and property managers. My grandfather hadn't just left behind money. He had left a sprawling empire of businesses, rental properties, investments. It was all overwhelming, but I wasn't about to let him down. Then things started going wrong. It began with small, unexplainable things. Documents vanishing, emails that I didn't send appearing in my inbox as if I'd replied to them. One day, a contractor called me, bewildered, asking why I'd canceled a major renovation project. I hadn't. Then it escalated. One morning, I arrived at Calloway Developments to find the locks had been changed. The receptionist, who'd worked for my grandfather for over 20 years, looked at me like she had seen a ghost. Daniel, she whispered, I thought you stepped down. What? I frowned. Who told you that? Her face went pale. Your Uncle Robert. My stomach twisted. I stormed into the office, only to find my uncle sitting at my grandfather's desk, flipping through papers as though he owned the place. He looked up and gave me a smug smile. Daniel, you're early, he said, completely at ease. What the hell is going on? I demanded. Why are you here? Why are the locks changed? He leaned back, completely relaxed, as if this was all perfectly normal. Well, since you seem to be struggling with all this responsibility, I took the liberty of stepping in. My blood ran cold. You have no right. Oh, what I do, he interrupted smoothly. You see, after dear old Dad passed, I found a few legal loopholes that allowed me to contest the will. I gritted my teeth. That's not what the lawyer said. The lawyer said what your grandfather wanted, he retorted. But legal battles take time. While you're busy fighting in court, someone needs to run things. The board agreed, he added, his voice dripping with venom. They don't trust you, Daniel. You're young, inexperienced. But me? He spread his arms wide, his smirk widening. I've been around a lot longer. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Where's the proof? I demanded. He opened a drawer and threw a thick envelope onto the desk. You'll be hearing from my lawyers soon. You should start preparing yourself, he said coldly. I stared at him, my heart racing. This wasn't just an angry outburst. This was Mark's revenge. I left that office feeling like I had been hit in the stomach. My mother was devastated when I told her. Your grandfather knew they'd try something like this, she said, shaking her head. She was right. 2 days later, a mysterious package arrived. No return address, no markings, just my name written in my grandfather's handwriting. I opened it and found a USB drive inside. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. A video file appeared. I clicked play, and the screen flickered to life. My grandfather's face appeared, looking tired but resolute. His voice was steady as he spoke. Daniel, if you're watching this, it means they're trying to take what's yours. I swallowed hard. Your uncle and cousin have been scheming behind your back for a long time. Mark has never earned anything, but Robert knows how to pull the strings. He's been waiting for me to die so he could take over. But I didn't spend my whole life building this just for them to tear it down. My fists clenched as I listened. They'll fight dirty. They'll lie, cheat, and steal. But I've made sure you're prepared. Everything you need to shut them down is already in place. I've left instructions with my lawyer. Look under my old desk at the estate. You'll find the missing piece. The video cut off. I sat there, my heart pounding. I had a choice. Let them win or fight back. And I wasn't about to back down. That same night, I drove to my grandfather's estate. The house, once full of life, now felt hollow and silent. I went straight to his old study, the room where he spent countless hours working. I searched the desk, my fingers brushing the wood, until I found it, a hidden compartment underneath. Inside was a manila folder. I opened it and my breath caught. Bank statements, signed contracts, emails, a detailed paper trail of everything my uncle and cousin had done. Embezzling from the company, bribing investors, using company funds to cover Mark's gambling debts. Grandfather had known, and he gathered all the proof. At the bottom of the folder was a handwritten note. Use this wisely. Don't let them take what I built. The law is slow, but the truth is powerful. Make sure everyone knows what they did. I clenched my jaw. It was time to take action. The next morning, I met with my grandfather's lawyer. When I placed the folder on his desk, his eyebrows shot up. This changes everything, he muttered as he flipped through the pages. With this evidence, we can take immediate legal action. That's not enough, I said firmly. I want everyone to know what they did. A slow smile spread across his face. I think I know exactly how to make that happen. Within 48 hours, everything was set in motion. My uncle and cousin had no idea what was coming. They walked into the board meeting expecting to remove me from the company. Instead, they walked right into a trap. As soon as everyone took their seats, I stood up, cleared my throat. Before we begin, I'd like to show you something. I clicked a button on the laptop, and the large screen behind me lit up. One by one, documents appeared. Bank records showing stolen funds, emails proving corruption, even a signed confession from a former employee they had bribed. The room filled with gasps. Board members exchanged stunned looks. Mark turned pale. Uncle Robert jumped up from his seat, shouting. "This is a setup," he yelled. "This is fake." I leaned back, calm as ever. Funny, because I also sent all of this to the IRS, the SEC, and the state attorney general. Uncle Robert's mouth hung open, then snapped shut. He was cornered. And then, the final blow, my grandfather's video. The entire room watched as he exposed their treachery in his own words. By the time the video ended, it was too late. The board immediately voted to remove both of them from their positions. Security escorted them out. But that wasn't even the worst part for them. 2 days later, federal agents knocked on their doors. The charges: fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. Mark tried to run, but he didn't get far. The final humiliation came a month later when I stood outside the courthouse, watching as Uncle Robert and Mark were led out in handcuffs. Uncle Robert refused to look at me. But Mark locked eyes with me, fury in his gaze. "You did this," he spat. "No," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You did this to yourself." The reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in their faces. Their empire was crumbling. Their money was seized. And me? I walked away, knowing my grandfather's legacy was safe, and somewhere I was sure he was smiling. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Stay stunned.